Thanks for sharing. For those of us who are joining us from the community and from the public, we appreciate your interest in the project, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you will note there will be an opportunity for public comment. We're live captioned. Please avail yourself and be ready to dial the number there on your screen, 971-247-1195, if you'd like to give public comment. If tonight you are not in a position to do so, please feel free. There are other opportunities, other ways that you can engage with the project. You can go to i5rosequarter.org. There are email addresses and many other ways that you can engage with the project team to share your thoughts and feedback in regards to the process that we're going through. I know we have just a couple of more Historic Albina Advisory Board members who are joining us in the virtual space. While we are waiting, we are just a week away from Thanksgiving and thought it would be appropriate to reflect on things that we are thankful for, even as we are dealing with and hopefully coming out of a global pandemic. I am thankful to be in a community that is observant, that is caring, that is looking to do something better. I am thankful for all of you who are in this space with us, who are committing your time, your resources, your intellect, your gifts to help improve the Rose Quarter Improvement Project. For those from the ODOT staff and the project staff, I'm thankful for your willingness to listen, to lean into the community, to acknowledge the harms, and to step forward into a place of lending your expertise, your gifts and talents, and how we might bridge those gaps, how we might provide a more equitable solution in transportation. I'm grateful for this venue, and that even on Zoom, though we'd love to be able to engage personally, that we still have the opportunity to see each other's faces and conduct the business and to connect. Ultimately, it's about relationships. We have the projects and we have the technical aspects and we have all of the politics, if you will, and the planning, but really it should be about people. And I'm excited that we are leaning into that we are leaning into how does it affect people? So I'm thankful, I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve with you this evening. And we're going to go to the next slide as we begin our meeting today. We will, as usual, review our agenda prior to public comment. We have an exciting agenda today. We're going to hear updates from Megan, a number of important topics that we have been sharing with you that we want to report back to you, things that we have heard from you and we are responding. It's the project team's desire to make sure that you are heard, that the community voice is elevated, and that we are being responsive to those things. There will be some updates in regards to the finance plan and an opportunity to talk about how we may be able to lend our voice in reaching out to the federal delegation. There'll be some updates in regards to the diversity plan coming forward with the COAC, as well as some exciting news in regards to the Design Collaboration Forum and how we can infuse historic Albina into all of the details of the infrastructure of this project. We're going to spend some time talking about our charter. We're going to do some housekeeping as we do the business and moving forward, again, in the sunsetting of the Executive Steering Committee and us, this group taking on some of those responsibilities. We just want to do our due diligence and do those housekeeping moments and make sure that we are functioning and governing ourselves correctly. We'll have an opportunity to revisit our conversation in regards to the project value of restorative justice and what that means to the historic Albina community and how it can affect and be infused throughout the Rose Quarter Improvement Project. And then we heard this group talking about outcomes and what would be quantitative and qualitative measures in regards to those values. And so we're going to have an opportunity to jump into some performance measures and what outcomes we would like to see as a result of this opportunity. And then we'll wrap up with next steps. Next slide, please. You all are familiar with this, and for those who are joining in the public space, your voice matters definitely to me and to this project team. They are consistently asking, what does the community see and hear? So please, I expect and always trust that you all will lend your authentic voice, speak your truth, that you will listen to all of our presenters for understanding, to your colleagues for understanding. And when things get passionate or heated or we disagree, that we will deal with the issues and not with people. Oftentimes, when we're dealing with passionate subjects such as our legacy, our community, things can get a little touchy. So we're going to experience some discomfort, but I appreciate that you would remain respectfully engaged. And we may not solve everything today in this meeting or even with this project, but we appreciate that you'll keep in mind we're going to have some non-closure, expect it, accept it, but continue to collaboratively work forward for a brighter future indeed. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to ask Mira if she would assist me with the public comment.
Erica, I think that Natalie is doing the public comment this evening.
Oh, thank you. I didn't
Happy
read
to do
well. Miss Natalie, thank you.
Either way, sorry about that mix up. These are just a few reminders. I think everyone's pretty familiar with the process here. There is a phone number that's listed on the agenda and the website, and it's gone out in our newsletters, all the information about how to call in to make a live comment. The phone number is on your screen there. A few reminders that if you are watching on the live stream, please remember to mute the video so we don't get feedback while you're speaking. And all of the comments today are going to be limited to 1 minute. We'll have a timer that we'll share on screen. We will, I'm looking at the waiting room and it looks like we do have one commenter today. So I will stop sharing my screen and admit this person. And I will share the on-screen timer. Hopefully that's visible. And then the commenter has the phone number ending in 1460. Could you please unmute yourself by dialing *6? Commenter with 1460, please make your comment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Diane Meisenhelder, and I've lived in the Albina community for over 32 years and took part, along with a couple of the people on this board, in the original Albina community plan. I've been working on many of the issues it addressed and even more at the neighborhood level throughout these last few decades and volunteer on the Environmental Justice Committee of the NAACP. I'm here today with one very brief comment. Coming on the heels of another round of international climate talks that have again failed to produce results on where we need to be, both in terms of justice for frontline communities, as well as the greatest existential crisis humanity has faced in our lifetimes, it's critical to say that freeway expansions should not even be on the table. That said, what I realize is I heard that some of the federal infrastructure dollars may be headed our way and may hasten this project along, is that many of the goals this board has pushed for the capping of the freeways, the reparations for how this community has been abused in the past, and should still be accomplished with these infrastructure bill funds. We don't need to expand the freeway and add to future miseries of climate chaos, but we could still try to reduce the harm that's been done and reduce some of the air quality concerns for middle schoolers and other youth in low-income neighborhoods hardest hit by pollution and the associated health risks.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, and we can fund jobs that are so badly needed, but for minority and women-owned businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do not see any other comments. Unfortunately, we are needing to limit the time for these public comments to 1 minute, and that's consistent with our other committees. I'll go ahead and move forward with the presentation.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you for that very thoughtful comment. We appreciate you taking the time. We appreciate your service in the community.
Excuse me, Erica, may I ask a question?
You absolutely can, Mr. Edwards.
I don't know how much time we had for public comment, but if we only have one person, and I don't know how many people we had, I apologize for arriving late, but I would hope that, that folks may have, maybe a few more seconds or maybe extra time if we still have a lot of time for that. So, not that we want to run over, but just to give everybody an opportunity to get their voice heard.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you for that. Miss Natalie, are we seeing any additional?
There are no additional public comments.
Thank you. Yes, agreed, Mr. Edwards. We can be flexible as we have time to make sure that the community voices are heard. I want to reiterate that we don't want this to be the only opportunity to engage with community members. We understand that this limited time with you all goes by very, very quickly, and we're often trying to get in so much information and get your input on so many things. And we want for the broader community also to be able to engage. And so please make sure that you are availing yourself to those other opportunities to connect with the project team by sending in emails and using the call-in line to leave your comments as well. The project team is committed to tracking those things, to making them available to not only this group, but being able to respond to those questions and comments as necessary. Ms. Sharon, I see your hand.
Thank you. I'm echoing what Keith Edwards has said, and I recall we've raised that a couple of times about allowing the comment, and perhaps we can decide, since my memory, which could be slipping, over the last several meetings, there's been a commenter or no commenters, or maybe two. So if we realize there's only one who's actually present and prepared to speak, we can say there's a 2 minute. You have 2 minutes as opposed to the clock going at 1 and then them seeming to exceed it. And it might be a nice way of saying we have one commenter, you have 2 minutes, something like that, that is engaging and encouraging. I'd never have heard like more than 3,
Yes.
often written. So just an idea.
No, I think it's an excellent idea. And I think this group, again, as you mentioned, can decide. I think we've allotted that particular time, and we've been doing our best to be equitable across the board and to eliminate any feeling of giving favoritism to those, but I think it is in our purview. I think it is within you all's decision-making to allow, if we have those moments available, to allow some extra time. So I would agree with that, and we'll make sure I elevate that for our next encounter. With that, and I see Megan nodding, so I'm going to turn over to our project director, Megan Channel, as she gives the project updates.
Thanks, Erica, and good afternoon, HAAB. I just wanted you to know I've taken note of your comments around the time of public comment too. So Erica and I can partner on that and make sure we're being responsive to that as we move forward. So thanks for the feedback on that. This month, you know, in the past we have indicated we're going to provide sort of an update on the project, but also making sure that we're addressing questions from the last meeting. As we were recapping the last meeting, really realized that the project update and responding to your questions from the last meeting are really one and the same. So I'm gonna kind of address a couple items today. The first one is around the status of the governor's office agreement with agency partners. I know probably to this board, I'm starting to sound repetitive with this update, but a letter of agreement is in process with the governor's office and the partners with ongoing revisions and coordination. I know that this is an area of interest to the board, and so we'll continue to have this item on our agenda until it is finalized, really to hold us accountable and reporting out to you and sharing those updates as we have them. But my update today is it is still in progress in coordination with the governor's office and the agency partners. I've also just want to give an update that we've initiated communication with city staff, specifically at the Bureau of Transportation, PBOT, primarily to understand the process that's needed for city re-engagement. So we'll be getting to work with city staff on that process, beginning to develop the needed agreements, defining the scope in terms of engagement, roles and responsibilities. Ultimately, City Council will need to provide direction on the city's formal re-engagement based on those agreements. So I don't have any more detail on exact timing around that, but other than this ODOT and city agreement coordination is beginning, and much like the governor's office agreement, I'll continue to keep you updated as this progresses. We've also heard the board's interest in and continued interest in the finance plan. I know I gave a brief update on this at our last meeting, but just wanted to let everyone know that we're on track to deliver the conceptual finance plan to the Oregon Transportation Commission on December 1st. And that's really based on the request from the commission at their meeting in September, where they advanced the hybrid 3 design option. So this conceptual finance plan is going to include refined cost estimates and really touch on the range of potential funding and financing opportunities. So federal, state sources that will provide that financing needed to cover the full cost of the project. So I just want to note that this is a conceptual finance plan. We actually are mirroring what was done for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program December of last year when they put together their conceptual finance plan. And it's really intended to kick off the financial planning process for the project. So that this plan will continue to be updated, refined, and as the design progresses and as we know more about the kind of specific funding and financing opportunities for that specific design element. So we'll be providing a brief status update to the Oregon Transportation Commission at their meeting this Thursday. And again, the delivery of that plan is still set for December 1st. And the finance plan is something we'll continue to bring back to this board as an informational item. So looking in early 2022 to have a deeper dive into that finance plan. And at our last meeting, I know that I brought up the equitable engagement compensation policy. I know that sort of with that probably left you with more questions than we had answers for at the time. And I believe you all should have received an email from Ms. Erica Warren earlier this week with the details and the paperwork. Apologize for the paperwork, but the paperwork that is needed to proceed with that. So Erica, if she hasn't already, I know we'll be reaching out with more one-on-ones, but please feel free to reach out to Erica, myself, others on the team if you have any questions about that. And then last but not least, while the COAC, the Community Oversight Advisory Committee, has not met since our last meeting, I do have some exciting news to share about their upcoming meeting this Thursday, that committee members will be reviewing and discussing the final draft diversity plan. And so that'll be happening this Thursday at their meeting, as well as their meeting in December, with expected finalization of that plan for the end of the year. And so we'll make sure that as we enter 2022, that we bring that diversity and subcontracting plan here to the HAAB to make sure that you are also receiving the details of that and really can celebrate the work that went in with the community and partnering and developing that. So that covers my my main updates here. I do want to turn it over to James McGrath just to provide a quick update on the Design Collaboration Forum and kickoff approach there. So James, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Megan. You all have a busy agenda, so I'm here on behalf of the design team for continuity and to listen to the important conversation tonight and to give you a bit of an update. The first is a number of you responded to a survey that was sent out and expressed interest in connecting with the design team more, working with us, being collaborators, reviewing our work, asking questions, and what have you. And so we're advancing that idea. A doodle poll was sent out to those, I think it was 6 HAAB members who expressed interest. And we identified a time and are about to send out the invitation. That time is going to be Tuesday afternoons. And it's going to be the first Tuesday of each month going forward. So it's sort of on an every other week schedule with this HAAB meeting for the whole group. And the intent is really like an office hours, really to be transparent with the work that's ongoing and allow you a forum to collaborate with us, ask questions. It's going to be somewhat unstructured, and it's about exposing the work that we're doing midstream. So we're going to try it out. We'd love to do it in person, but we'll be doing it virtually for the time being. And the meeting will go out after tonight's meeting. Also wanted to say that from last meeting, we heard lots of good feedback, real interest, sincere interest in shaping the streets, the local streets that we talked about briefly last time, as well as a real interest in expression and intent around the walls, the landscapes, the edges, all of the topics that we talked about last time. And we are advancing that work and intend to come back to you in December with a robust set of ideas for discussion and dialogue, and ultimately working to incorporate more of your feedback into our designs and trying to push those designs into the construction documents and ultimately the built form with lasting value. And one other thing that we heard was, well, 2 other things that we heard is there's probably room for more collaborators. And so we are endeavoring with Erica's help to broaden the group of collaborators that help us make relevant design decisions and culturally appropriate expression. So we're working to enrich our team with more collaborators. And we're also embarking on a larger, we heard clearly from you, the idea that it's not just the HAAB, but it is many more voices in the community that can be engaged. And so we're embarking on developing a program to engage broader audiences. After we've engaged with you in December, there's likely to be a sequence of other types of forums where we talk about the project and some of the design ideas that we've been working with you on. So with that, I'll leave you to tonight's business. I'm here to listen and certainly to answer questions, but I think we move on to talk about the federal delegation letter next.
Thanks, James. And before we jump to that, I want to introduce a member of our ODOT team, our Urban Mobility Office Communications Director, Tia Williams. I believe that Tia has been in front of the board before, but kind of a formal introduction and opportunity for her to share a little bit more about herself, her role within ODOT, and then she's got a couple topics to cover in our update as well. So Tia, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Megan. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Tia Williams. I'm the communications director for the Urban Mobility Office and do a lot of public affairs for the Rose Quarter project, our toll program, and then 205. So just a couple updates that I want to share with you here. So as many of you likely know, the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was signed on November 15th, which is huge. That includes up to $100 billion in transportation grants, including large scale grants that can fund projects like the Rose Quarter. So your help in writing a letter of support for this project as a candidate for funding could be a real game changer and have significant influence. So we'd love to hear sort of your feedback on if that's of interest to you, if you could support in writing a letter. We'd be happy to circulate a draft so Erica can look to you to help follow up to see if the board would be interested in that. And then as you all know, we've been working on the project's rebrand in partnership with PDX Black Excellence. For us, it's been really important that the look and the feel of the project really reflects the Albina community and that, you know, again, it's connected to community. So your feedback was really critical in that, and just want to thank each of you for taking the time to fill out that survey. And really excited to announce that we have picked a design, design number 3, which was the purple and orange logo that we sent out. So we are currently working on rolling that out to the public, and we can anticipate that happening in early January. So again, really excited about that, and just want to thank you all for your feedback in that survey.
Thank you, Tia and James and Megan. We wanted to open up some moments for Historic Albina Advisory Board members to ask questions in regards to the things that you just heard in the update. Ms. Sharon, I see your hand.
First, it's exciting to see you, Tia. I have heard you before, but the specifics of the work that really is interesting to me around what I committed to doing. So I love the way you broke it down and talked about the importance of engagement, authentic engagement, the reflection of the culture of Historic Albina, and then how all of this fits together in, you know, building for the future, if you will. So I'm appreciative of that and look forward to being engaged in ways that allow us to lift and move and go forward. Even with the agitation, I put what my mother always told me when Erica talked about, you know, how we deal in difficult as well as easier times. And my mother said, how do you think you get a pearl out of an oyster? You got to have some agitation, sweetie. And so I've always taken it that there is a way to actually engage in different conversation without being difficult or being difficult without being ridiculous and dramatic. So I think that in this effort to hear you talk about listening and hearing, acknowledging, and then utilizing that to move forward, that was very heartwarming. Off the topic a minute, but Megan, I have a late question I wanted to ask. Can you refresh for me just briefly when you talk about the DEI, the construction of the development of this DEI plan that COAB will be bringing to us a bit later? Is that solely for the I-5? We know we've talked about the contractors, contracts, or is this going to be kind of a mirror to what ODOT would be looking at, examining, implementing, and action beyond this in all projects? I wasn't sure if it's specific to or it's emerging from this particular project, but does it have the tentacles to actually reach out and be about transformative DEI contracting and all in ODOT? And I just don't know. So I don't recall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful question. So the diversity plan and the subcontracting plan is something that is specific to the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project. It is developed by our CMGC, so that's Hamilton Sunt Joint Venture, in association with Raymore. Raymore has taken the lead in putting that together, and it really focuses in on the workforce and then the disadvantaged business enterprise program for the I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project, looking at, you know, mentor protege approaches, technical assistance approaches. So not only in the tactics for how we implement and bring a diverse workforce in building the project, but what's the work and the resourcing to build the pipeline for that as well. And so to directly answer your question, it is specific to the project. That said, aspirationally, like this is the first time that ODOT has done a diversity and some contracting plan to this level. And so the hope is that this will now be a model for other projects, that are using the CMGC model to be able to use this going forward in other projects as well. So we're starting with Rose Quarter and hoping that it will start to infuse the different practices as we can into the other efforts that ODOT has as well.
And if I might just quickly say how we turn aspiration to intention and intention to action, that and hope into evidence, how we can work with push, pull in order for ODOT. I think it's very important. And it's an extremely telling statement when you say it's the first time for ODOT to embark on this. I think of all the years and all the projects, current and historical. So how to move hope to action and how to be deliberate and intentional. There's so many voices here and beyond us that have the ability to actually guide, push, pull, and kick the can forward. So I was pleased to hear that, and I'm going to keep my ear on how to make that happen. There are people, Keith, there's so many folks here who could help that, inform that to actually have a vehicle and an engagement in that. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And so looking forward to partnering, continuing to partner with this board as well as our Community Oversight Advisory Committee in those opportunities. So thank you.
Are there others on the board? Srinivasa, did you have a question? And then I see your hand, Mr. Edwards, after Srinivasa.
I do, yes. I was curious about the federal infrastructure bill, and in terms of writing letters of support, what I wanted to know is ODOT's request for this grant funding specific to this project, or would they be asking for funding for multiple future projects as well? Would it be kind of a larger request or very project specific?
Yeah, good question. So the request of this group is really specific to the Rose Quarter project because, it does fit with what we've heard around the Reconnecting Communities grants. We feel like there's a lot of connection to some of those kind of buckets of funding outlined in the bill. So really the letter of support would be focused in on the Rose Quarter project and how the federal investment could really create more leverage to get the community benefits that I think we all want to see on this project.
Let me just clarify. So what I'm asking though is, would ODOT be submitting a request for funding for multiple projects, and our letter and this project would be one of many, or would this be the sole project that ODOT would be requesting funds for?
Right. Okay. Sorry about that. So ODOT will be submitting requests for funding across different projects, but that we're still sort of working through right now. We did receive an allocation. And so, again, like those details haven't been worked out, but Rose Quarter in particular, we will be submitting an application on. And so I'm happy to come back and give an update to this group as we continue to flesh that out. But ODOT, again, will be submitting applications across some of the other projects, 205 Interstate Bridge as well. But for this group, the request would be focused in on Rose Quarter.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Edwards.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the sharing from Ms. Williams and Megan as well. And I really appreciate the comment and question that Ms. Sharon Gary Smith had that made me think about something that I hope that it's in the plans here, that when all is said and done at the end of the day, I would hope that the folks that are sitting here that are from the community that will have an opportunity to debrief on what went right and what went wrong with this whole project. That's critical and important going forward if we're talking about building a template so that we can replicate this on other projects that benefit our community.
Great point. Thank you. Other thoughts, questions? I got a question and I just wanted to clarify, and Tia, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we sent out the survey in regards to the logo designs, the majority of this board selected logo number 3, option number 3, and the project team has decided to advance that. So I want to just reiterate to you the importance of your voice and that your selection helped us to move that forward. Other thoughts or questions in regards to the project update? If not, let's move forward in the business. Ms. Natalie, if you would share the slides again, I appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, this is some housekeeping that we all have to do to make sure that we are governing ourselves accordingly. Next slide, please. We wanted to make sure that we revisited with you purpose of this board. Definitely so key that responsive to community needs, and that we wanted to make sure that we had a broad voice across this. But I appreciate you all also noting and leaning into that there are more engagements that need to be had. There are other voices in the community that need to be heard, but this board specifically helping to develop and design how this project can be responsive to community needs. As James talked about, providing input on the street and highway connections. We definitely will be looking to this board in regards to equitable community engagement, what that looks like, especially in light of all of our history and the trust deficit. How do we utilize this project to help begin to bridge some of that? And we'll be looking to this group to help us with that. Looking for your voice to recommend ways to minimize impacts during construction. And I know that that was a concern from this group. So that is part of our charter, our purpose, to adopt the project performance metrics. And we're going to talk a little bit about that further in our meeting today. But again, that is measurable, quantitative and qualitative outcomes that we can go back to, Mr. Edwards, in our debrief and say, how did we do? And I would say that from what I know about this project team, we are establishing those, but they're willing to pivot and move with us. And this is going to be a project over some time. So we'll have an opportunity to reflect and say, okay, where do we need to pivot and how do we need to focus better? So again, adopting the project performance metrics is a part of this group's charge. And then to advise the team on issues elevated from the Community Oversight Advisory Committee. So again, as you're hearing reports in regards to maybe the diversity plan or other things that our colleagues and the other committees are working on, be looking to you for your input there, your advice on how the project connects with other community efforts. So you all, many of you are involved in other projects across the community, the Russell Williams Project, other housing bureau projects, the Community Reinvestment Initiative, so many other things that folks are doing. And we want to make sure that it's collaborative throughout the historic Albina district and community as we're preparing for our future. Next slide, please. So some of the things that we have updated that were not included originally prior to the sunsetting of the Executive Steering Committee was that the project team is committed to making sure that you all are briefed on some of these issues. We know that the highway governance and programming is of great importance to this group. We just want you to know that ODOT is advocating for involvement from the community, that the community voice be leader in the process. We understand that the city is a key component there and that they will be leading. And as we get through this letter of agreement, we'll have more developments on what that governance would look like. but just know that in the places where I am sitting and hearing from this team, they are committed to helping to make sure that the community voice is strong, that the voice is elevated and leading the process in regards to governance of the highway covers. Also, in this urban design and the structural details of the highway cover and other parts of the infrastructure, we'll be updating you there. And then, as Megan mentioned earlier, with the funding and finance plan, as well as Tia alluded to in regards to the federal delegation letter, we want to continually come back to you and this group and let you know where the updates are in regards to funding and how we might finance this grand vision to help reconnect the community. And then the project design and construction schedule. There are different moving parts on this. Again, some of the project is at 30% design, some is moving closer to other percent of design, but we want to make sure that we're continually updating you in regards to those aspects of the project. Next slide, please. And Ms. Shelley, I do see your hand. So we wanted to just give a brief opportunity for this group. You should have received the charter last week, and with those brief changes, wanted to know if any person on the board had any questions, any additional thoughts prior to us taking some time at our next meeting to have a formal adoption of the new charter. I don't see hands from HAAB members, but I'll take this opportunity, Shelley, to take your question or comment.
Thanks. Hi, this is Shelley Romero. I work with Megan and the team at ODOT, and I don't usually speak up, but given my background, having in the past worked for a member of Congress, I wanted to just further clarify the question about whether ODOT would be seeking funds for just Rose Quarter or other projects. My guess is that the bill will have a number of different sort of buckets of money, and that those buckets will have criteria. And so we'll want to be really thoughtful and strategic about maybe putting in for several projects, but matching it with a bucket where we think it will compete with the best, which is probably why we will submit more than just one request for Rose Quarter as well as maybe other projects. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Very important. Thank you so much for that clarity. Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Thank you very much. And I don't mean to get political, but I just have some real concerns about something that says it's led by the city when we have no leadership in the city and haven't had any recent leadership in the city. I don't want to be held hostage by their lack of leadership in something that we're doing in the community. I don't know if we can get around that, but if there's any way to get around that, or if there's a way that we can leverage that, I think that needs to be done. And I would appreciate if the ODOT would support the community in making sure that the city has some type of leadership in making sure that our concerns are being heard and being met.
Megan, I saw you unmute. Yes.
Yep. Thank you for your comment, Mr. Edwards. And I would say that yes, you have our commitment to continue to push for a strong community voice in that process. I know in our conversations previously around Hybrid 3, and the recommendation letter that was prepared to the Transportation Commission, a key thing that I heard, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but a key thing that I heard from this board was that there would be diverse representation from the Black community and from the historic albino community in that process to establish the governance and then ultimate programming on top of the highway covers. And so that is an area we're carrying forward that request and recommendation from the board, and an area where we'll continue to advocate.
Thank you for that.
Any other thoughts about the proposed charter updates? We won't be taking a formal vote today, We did initially do a formal vote to adopt the charter, and we want to do that so that we are staying in line with our governance. We won't be taking that today, but I want to know if those things resonate with you, if there are input changes, things that you'd like to see, so that we can be prepared for that when we gather the next time. And this is specifically in regards to the charter and the purpose of our gathering together. Ms. Sharon, I see your hand.
I think without belaboring it, but what I liked is that it tightened, it kind of clarified, it made it more specific about who we are and what we're about and what we've come together and agreed to do. And so I think as much clarity and definition and agreement to what the HAAB is, I'm thinking to the larger community, to our larger community, so that the work we're doing, the conversations we're having, the questions that are being raised, as in today, that all is in fitting with what we said. It's almost like they say, you are who you say you are. Well, that's what I really feel about as specific and clear and representative as we can be, because there's so many others behind us waiting to hear what's really going on. And I think we are participants because we have some shared history. We're also representatives of different communities and community members. And then we're supposed to be listeners and carry it forward for all of those who are not here. And I like as much clarity around that so I can explain what's the difference in this and, you know, the Williams, because people are trying to understand all of these entities now that are supposed to be doing our business. And so I appreciated the tightening, and what I read is tightening and clarity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Other thoughts? Comments? If not, be prepared. If you'd like to, please send me an email if additional thoughts come to you. In our December meeting, we plan to just put it to a vote for this group for a formal adoption of the charter. So thank you for that. Ms. Natalie, if you put the slides back up for me, I'd appreciate it. We want to share with you some of the results from our restorative justice poll, if you will. Several of you participated and gave some invaluable insight into what restorative justice in this community would look like in relationship to this project. And so now we're going to transition into presenting the results from that and have a brief discussion about how we track that process, if you will, and what those outcomes are. So next slide, please. We just want to share that overwhelmingly, these are not in any particular order, but these were the main themes that resonated with you all. What this project can bring to this community in regards to restorative justice, that you all wanted to see this project prioritize building the Black community over profit. That you wanted to see opportunities for home, property, and business ownership. That's what restorative justice meant to you in relationship to this project. That this project be committed to mechanisms that help to rebuild and maximize generational wealth through ownership and through jobs. That this project help to accelerate, I thought that was a great word, Mr. Edwards, accelerate closing the wealth gap between Black and white communities here, that this project can be a catalyst for that. Start the fire, if you will, and moving us forward, accelerating, closing the wealth gap. And that this project embody the values of the community. And I think that's really key as the project went forward and was developing what they thought the community wanted to see. But you all are saying that you want this project to embody the community, so to take on what is important to members of this community. Next slide, please. Commitments. Most of you all agreed with the commitments that were listed in the restorative justice value. And the suggestion that you all had was that this project needed more community partners. And we'll be looking to you all and your networks to help us identify who some of those are, that there be more civic and economic opportunities. And these were all, again, commitments and suggestions for revisions to the commitment section of restorative justice. That this project facilitate the development of Black-owned businesses through project opportunities. So again, not just the DBE, right? So everyone may not be a tradesperson, but there may be opportunities in other areas for Black business people to be increased for their capacity to be built in relationship to this project. And that there be inclusion of work on other regional projects, so that this really is a catalyst, that this begins to expand ODOT's vision towards how we reinvest in the Black community and underrepresented communities in this region. Next slide, please. Outcome priorities. Really, that ODOT would be willing and lean in and do what is necessary to earn community trust, to advance short and long-term action for community stability, economic wealth, and opportunity. So we realize we want for this to be long-term and generational, but there are some short-term actions. There are some things that can be done as we build towards those. There's access to family wage jobs, healthcare, education, and affordable business space as a potential outcome priority for this project. Opportunities for wealth generation through partnerships, and to maximize the disadvantaged business enterprise, minority business opportunities at every phase of the project. Next slide, please. So we wanted to leave some moments here. You can go back to the full screen, Ms. Natalie, for you all to comment in regards to maybe some of you did not have an opportunity to share on the restorative justice poll, and you had some thoughts that you wanted to include. Our plan is to take all of that input from you all and to reinfuse them into the project values document. And that really is kind of the lamppost, the guiding principles for the project team and how they conduct business. And it will be something, again, that's living, that we want to be able to check and see how are we doing, how are we measuring. So I wanted to open this time for some discussion around that. Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Thank you very much, Erica. I just wanted to thank you for capturing that. I think I appreciate you hearing us, listening, and because you can't hear us unless you listen well, and I certainly appreciate that. But I would like to hear from our young folks. I know early on we encouraged our young folks to increase this panel with young people. And I want to hear from them because the future is theirs. And I want to make sure that they're being heard and their issues and concerns are being on here as well.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'd love to be able to share with you that we have some exciting conversations happening with Srinivasa and her team at Camp Elso, and how we can incorporate the youth voice into design as we are preparing and shaping what would be their future. And so the project team is excited about that. I think Ms. Srinivasa could explain their Your Street, Your Voice and other projects more succinctly, but there is a rapid conversation on how we can elevate that concern and we can get the youth voice really incorporated collaboratively into this project. Other thoughts or comments in regards to your survey results, those things that you all mentioned that you wanted to be included as commitments, priorities under the value of restorative justice, as the project team looks to that to say, this is our guide, this is what we want this project to accomplish. Are there other things for the record, if you will, that you wanted to share at today's meeting? Yes, that will be awesome. I see your comments, Pranavasa, and I think December's meeting will be appropriate to share a bit more about that, Mr. Edwards, and how we are trying to partner and collaborate with the design team and getting our young people involved in this process. I don't want to belabor the time just to belabor it. I know everyone's probably been in Zoom meetings all day. I want you to know that we are listening, that I am elevating all of your concerns, everything you all share with me in regards to the project, how we can make it better, how the project team can be more responsive to community. We are discussing those things outside of these meetings, and we want to incorporate your voice. So we'll be taking all of those and formally incorporating them into the project values document. And there will be some other pieces of that we'll be looking to update and get your input on, as much of it was developed prior to the HAAB. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to do that. We realize we cannot restore everything on this project, but it is our goal to make sure that the community benefits in a measurable and quantifiable way. Mr. Clark, I see your hand.
I just wanted to just say that I'm excited that the process is going to a different phase, and being able to participate from a design perspective, which I think I could lend a little bit of insight in terms of what I do on a daily basis with my business. So it's excited to see that come to fruition and move forward to the next stages.
Indeed, we're excited about your participation in that as well. I know James and the urban design team are looking forward to your participation and your expertise there, and the rest of you all who have capacity. And again, that design forum doesn't eliminate this broader board giving input there, but they're just going to do some of the forework, right, to be able to bring back to this board for discussion. So Ms. Natalie, with that, if you will share the slides again. We're going to just move on forward. I'm going to introduce to you Monica. She is the Deputy Project Director for this project. This is the part where we are going to begin to talk about what are the measures for success on this project and getting your input into how we have measurable outcomes. So Ms. Monica, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Erica, and good evening, HAAB members. It's great to be with you this evening and great to see everybody's face. As Erica mentioned earlier, one of the aspects of the board's purpose is to adopt our performance measures that will allow us to track and demonstrate the project's success in meeting the desired outcomes that are defined in our values. So I want to be clear that the measures that we brought to you today are truly proposed. We've put a lot of thought into the measures what they could look like, and provided a list for your consideration today around what responds to your desired outcomes and what's feasible to track and report. But we want to know what you think success looks like on this project. Did we hit the mark with these measures, and how can we improve? So we want this to be an iterative process, and the end result is really should be a list that the board can support and then hold us accountable to. So my presentation today is meant to provide some background on what we have considered so far and provide more information on what the measures mean, to give context that informs your decision-making. So we're excited to really build on the innovative work that our team has done so far and bring these measures to the finish line. So next slide, Natalie. Yeah, so starting with our purpose, what do we mean by performance measure and what is that really? So a performance measure is something that can be measured, it's implementable, and it has a definable goal. So they really indicate the effectiveness of our current process and determine what success looks like for the project. So next slide, Natalie. So the performance measures are an intentional application of the project values, so really our North Star on this project, in order to achieve tangible community benefits for the project. So when developing the list of measures, we considered metrics for all the desired outcomes of the project, as well as those overall aims and commitments associated with each of the 4 project value categories. And so next slide. So in order to do this, we collaborated with experts on our team with a varied variety of backgrounds in design, construction, business opportunities, our workforce development team, and our community involvement team in order to develop this draft list of measures. The performance measure sub-team, as we called it, also included a representative from our partners at Metro, and then other partners, so the Federal Highway Administration and Portland Public Schools and TriMet were also involved in reviewing and refining the measures as they were developed. So next slide. So this all started about a year ago. So in fall of 2020, we started considering an initial list of over 100 measures that addressed all different kinds of aspects of the outcomes in different ways, and really drew from a variety of the best practices and examples from other government partners, peer agencies, professional organizations, and institutions that have developed measures prior to this project. So through much discussion last winter, the sub-team narrowed that list initially down to 40 measures to really balance representation of all the different values and outcomes and the implementation, how these will be implemented. Then the sub-team continued to work, continued to consider where the measures could be consolidated together across the different values to have more broad indicators of success. And that resulted in the spring, we were down to 30 measures. And then here we are this fall. We went back and reconsidered the list of measures based on our work together on the different design options, on the hybrid 3 cover recommendation. We also used our new board input tracking matrix to better reflect your priorities in the list of measures. And that's how we got to where we are today. So 26 measures is where we'll start the discussion today for your consideration. Next slide. So in developing and refining the measures, the sub-team considered whether each potential metric had a definable goal and whether it had clear potential for implementation, what was a best fit for the desired outcomes, or what needed partnership for implementation. So the sub-team also considered whether the list as a whole included the right mix of quantitative and qualitative metrics to really best reflect the community priorities that we've heard to date. On the next slide, so the performance measures will be tracked and reported as a part of our project process. This may be done either numerically or what we're calling quantitative measures, or through a list of strategies developed or actions implemented or elements included in the projects. And those are being tracked as what we're calling our qualitative measures. So on the next slide, the sub-team also considered the timeframes in which measures could be tracked and reported to demonstrate success. Some of the measures will be able to track and report right now in the design phase. Others might not be able to track until construction starts, and others might actually not be able to report on until after construction, where we might have, say, models during construction or during design, but actual information might come afterwards. Others still, we may not be able to demonstrate success towards until much after the project is complete. And so we envision working with the Highway Cover Governance Commission in really tracking and reporting on some of these measures as well far into the future. So further, these measures also represent a way that the agency can continue to do business differently beyond the project. So This list of measures is really unique nationally and is currently serving as a model for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program performance measures. So Rose Quarter is one project as a part of our broader regional system, as we're all aware, with other projects like IBR. And what's exciting is that this consistency will help us track real benefits beyond Rose Quarter, beyond just this project. So for example, what workforce or DBE capacity did we build on Rose Quarter that allowed for continued pipeline growth on IBR? What opportunities for leadership were created that led to more influence in decision-making for future projects such as IBR? There's a lot of opportunities for collaboration in these performance measures. So next slide, Natalie. So like I said, in total, the draft list for discussion includes 26 measures. 17 of those are quantitative and 9 are qualitative. There are about 7 to 8 measures for each value, except for climate action and improved public health. And that difference is really mainly due to that value having so much overlap with the other values, and specifically mobility focus. In particular, there's a lot of overlap between those two. And so some of those climate related measures really are falling into the mobility focus category. And since the board is continuing to discuss and refine the restorative justice value, like Erica was in your discussion that we were just having here today, we plan to continue to make refinements to those performance measures to reflect your feedback. And we're starting our discussion today with those mobility and climate and health measures to start off today, and we'll come back in the future with the restorative justice and the transparent decision-making and community input measures. Overall, the project is still early in design, and there's a lot of opportunity to continue to change course and ensure that our project is really driven by these values and these performance measures. But at the same time, the progression of the team's work related to early work packages and the diversity plan means that this is a prime moment to start implementing these procedures and begin tracking and reporting and evaluating and pivoting as needed. So that's where we are today, and kind of the drive behind starting to get these set in place. So next slide, Natalie. So now that I've introduced kind of the background regarding how we got this list of draft measures, I want to dive into the measures and really hear from you. What do you think? Did we miss anything? How can we make these better? So each measure really boils down to a central theme, and I'll be highlighting this in the presentation here. You can find the full list of measures, including the specific metrics, in the packet that Erica sent out last Tuesday, if you'd like to compare and follow along with the presentation here. We're also working on finalizing a glossary for all those words within the measures that are underlined. So that'll be coming in the future also. And so starting with the mobility measures, increasing mobility for all users of the interstate and our local streets is one of the core values of the Rose Quarter project. So with these performance measures, we wanted to focus on how the project can improve mobility to really achieve safer travel and enhanced economic growth in a neighborhood that's welcoming to the historic Albina community. So first, for the mobility focus, the draft quantitative measures, we're seeking to numerically track and report on things such as increasing the number of people walking and using mobility devices. So think of anything with wheels, and riding transit through the project area, reducing time traveling on the freeway for people driving, creating an inviting neighborhood, inviting street environment, increasing safety for everyone on both the local streets and the highway, increasing safety for people walking and using the mobility devices, and providing opportunities for improving transit operation and service through the project area. And then on the next slide, we have the qualitative measures for mobility. And this is really around designing a street environment that's welcoming to the historic Albina community, and increasing the access to the Rose Quarter Transit Station for all users that are walking and rolling through the area. And these, like I mentioned earlier, these qualitative measures will be lists of strategies or actions or elements that are incorporated into the project. And we'll show you an example later on kind of how we see that being reported and tracked. So then moving into the climate and health measures, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving the health really of everyone that lives and works and plays, goes to school, does business, and is transiting through the project area is another core value of the Rose Quarter project. So as mentioned earlier, there are fewer performance measures directly in this value because this value has so much overlap with mobility focus in particular. So for climate health, the draft of list measures seeks to numerically track a couple things. So achieving a green transportation project through bronze level green roads certification. So green roads is an independent third-party rating system. And within that rating system, there's actually 72 different potential credits or performance measures that really seek to challenge project teams to go above and beyond what the minimum environmental, social, and economic performance measures typically are done on projects. So even though this is one performance measure on this list here, there's really kind of up to 72 sub-performance measures within green roads. And then the second item is reducing or avoiding air and noise pollution impacts to Harriet Tubman Middle School, neighborhood businesses, and all of our local streets in the area. And then onto the qualitative measures for climate and health. The draft list seeks to track and report these through, again, lists of strategies and actions or elements to support health in the Albina neighborhood and support the broader effort to manage traffic congestion through congestion pricing and other improvements in the area. So next slide. So I talked a little bit already about how the measures have gone through a review process from the sub-team and the larger team to include our technical leadership team and our project management group. And this includes the partners that are noted on the screen here. And then where we are today, HAAB and COAC will be discussing the draft list of measures this winter. And then following our discussions, we'll go back and revise the measures and bring those back for additional feedback in the spring. So one thing I'm sure that you noticed as you were looking through the measures is that we haven't yet included actual numbers or actual percentages. So after getting your initial feedback and making some revisions to the measures, we'll also start talking about goal setting. That's a next step for us. So for example, when we say reduction in crashes, for instance, what would we assume is that appropriate percentage, balancing the outcomes and what we'd like to see as reasonable goals. So starting to put numbers to that, is that 5%, is that 15, is that 20? So there's some areas where we have more flexibility and we have larger ranges. And so we want to discuss that more in detail as we start to settle in on what the appropriate measures are. And see what resonates with you. On to the next slide. So we're also ready to start thinking through our implementation plan, and that'll be used internally really to set up the procedures necessary to track the performance measures. This will include the methods for tracking the measures, different team assignments and responsibilities. And then some measures will require coordination across teams, and we'll start identifying that. And what we're proposing right now is that we'll report these quarterly, which gives the team to kind of compile and track our actions. And we envision that this quarterly report would go to both you as the HAAB as well as COAC and be provided publicly on the website. And these quarterly reports will really give you as a board as well as COAC the opportunity to provide the project team with feedback on how we're doing, and then get your input on where we need to course correct and what we need to do to meet those goals that we set. So finally, one last slide here. I wanted to just show a quick example of what a template might look like for reporting performance measures. You'll notice this is just gibberish text that we've included while we're waiting to finalize these measures together, but this is the layout that we're thinking. We have space to add the measures themselves, and next to that, a list of actions that were taken to date. This is relevant for both our quantitative and qualitative measures that are reported. This will be a way that the quantitative measures, where we may not be able to report yet the exact number based on its time frame, but we could talk about maybe some actions that were taken to advance towards that goal. And then there's also space to report on the quantitative results numerically there at the bottom. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Erica, to help facilitate some discussion and get some feedback.
Detail.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll lean into you first. Thank you, Monica, for your that initial. I'm sure that we'll spend more time with you as we dive into these going forward. You all know how important I see you and how important this project team does. And so we really need your input and that you've had a little bit of time to look through them. And let's just have some discussion about what you see, what you are sensing. Did the team miss anything? What other things might you like to see measured? Are there things on the list that are more or less important that would help this project demonstrate success? And you know what, we might even, Natalie, if we could go back to maybe slide 27 briefly, which I think is the first mobility focus, increasing connectivity for the traveling public and local community. And I'll open the floor for discussion if there are HAAB members who have comments. Do you feel like the performance team, the sub team is on point? Are there things that you would like to see changed, added, amended? Open for discussion. Let me see if I can see hands. Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Thank you. Has there been any collaboration with public transit? And I say collaboration, not only coordinating with them and collaborating with them, but also looking at the community in that area and seeing what kind of behaviors and habits they have in regards to using public transportation, and perhaps taking a survey to find out what could be improved to encourage them to use public transit more often.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Mr. Edwards. I know that TriMet has some of that information, and I think that's a great thing we could dive into more and bring back some feedback there.
And Monica, is it fair to say, I know TriMet is part of our different sub teams and has been involved in helping us craft these draft measures as well, right?
Yep. Yeah. TriMet was part of the technical leadership team, so they have taken a look at him. But I think maybe there's some more intentionality around our questions that we asked to kind of dive deeper and get some of that info for sure.
I raise that because it's important to establish some kind of a baseline so you know whether you've improved the use of public transit or it's declined and why.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that'll get into some future conversations we want to have too around setting those measures, like what are our goals. So that's really important to understand as we start to set goals. So thank you for sure.
Other comments or questions? I know that climate and health was of particular importance to many members of this group. I wondered if everyone understood, as Monica was sharing in regards to the green roads bronze level and how that there are so many checkpoints there, other outcomes and performance measures. So while it seemed there may be not many, that really there's quite a few. So wondered if there might be some questions or discussion around either mobility focused or climate and health performance measures. Mr. Edwards.
Again, I certainly have some health concerns, and I don't know if there's ever been a baseline established for the children that are going to Harriet Tubman when they enter Harriet Tubman and when they leave Harriet Tubman, and the folks that live in the community surrounding that area as well. Certainly, they're impacted by the living close to the freeway. And certainly that's something that I think should be taken into consideration, how that impacts them, because since we're making improvements, we should be making improvements that are going to enhance their longevity and their health.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in a couple of our measures, we talk about looking into installing more monitoring. I know that Harriet Tubman has worked with the local university to do some monitoring, but I think there's, we'll take a look and see how we can incorporate that comment even more into our measures, make sure we've got that covered for sure.
Yes, I just think it's important. If my child enters Harriet Tubman in the 6th grade and they're there for 3 years, what kind of difference, after we establish a baseline when they enter to Harriet Tubman, what do they look like, health-wise when they leave Harriet Tubman? And that's important. I mean, we're getting ready to do this thing. We need to do it right and make sure it's comprehensive so that our community health-wise is being taken care of as well. If they're all dead from what we're trying to do, what's the point?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Other thoughts? I don't want to leave anyone out of the conversation, but I definitely want to make sure that you all are giving feedback and input. Srinivasa, we can have some additional conversation, the question about learning more about the climate measures. And I'm wondering if you're specifically asking in regards to the bronze level green road certification and what that looks like in regards to performance measures, in regards to climate health. I'm sure that we can, yes. So Monica and Megan, is that something that we can provide some additional information to this group on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. We can definitely provide a presentation, maybe even in conjunction with our partners at Green Roads, to give a better understanding of all the details. There's a lot of details in Green Roads, and so happy to share more information there.
Perfect. Natalie, if you could share the slides for me, slide 35. I am shocked that we are here, but I want to stress to you, the project team is really looking for your input, to hear what the community has to say, to help to guide and to hold this project accountable to how this process can be successful, and that we see benefit for this community in the middle, in the beginning, and at the end, right? That Mr. Edwards' comments are on point, that there is benefit, and that at the end of this, we're not looking to say, well, it wasn't worth it, that there are measures that we can look to in the short term and in the long term that increase restorative economic justice and provide benefit for this community. I want to let you all know that I'm excited. I know that the design team is very, very excited in regards to the kickoff of the design collaboration forum. So again, that meeting will be every other week from this meeting. So traditionally, we would meet this group, the full board, on the 3rd Tuesday. And so the design collaboration forum will be on the 1st Tuesday. And I realized only 6 members from this group responded and had capacity. That is wonderful, fine. It is open to those of you who maybe can't commit to coming all the time, but can jump in. You are welcome to participate. Those are those street undercrossings, all of those lovely ideas to begin to infuse the historic Black Albina community into the infrastructure of the project. So for the future, we're going to continue to move forward with that, also with shaping these performance measures. So I'm going to be looking to you, asking those questions deeper of you in our one-on-ones. If you have thoughts that come to you outside of this process, please feel free to email me and I will advance them to the project team. For future also, I think I just mentioned it, the Design Collaboration Forum kind of meld into the infrastructure design, the overcrossings, the landscaping, how we can incorporate this community into those things. Direction from this group on the highway and local street solutions, as well as feedback on community impacts and how you all can help the team shape how to minimize those community impacts. Next slide. Before we leave today, I want to share with you, because of the holidays in December, we will not be meeting on the 21st. It should be on your calendar for us to meet on the 14th. So that folks can go into the holiday getting ready for family, friends, and lots of food and hopefully some rest. So again, make note of that. Take a look at your calendar. Traditionally, we meet on the 3rd, but this time is going to be on the 2nd Tuesday. Thank you, Ms. Sharon. I know you have another obligation, so good to see you. And for the rest of you all, Megan, Monica, James, Tia, thank you for being an advocate, for continuing to elevate the voices of this community on the project. To the Historic Albina Advisory Board members, thank you for serving. Please get those forms to me so that I can make sure that we are getting you compensated for your work. We realize your time is much more valuable, but we appreciate your working with us all the time that you have even volunteered to this point. We thank you for that. And if there aren't any further, I would like to say good night. Thank you again, and we will see you all in December.
All right, thank you.